Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. For those who are Facebook users, check out the Titans of Podcasts and Wrestling group, available now at facebook.com. There is a ton of information there for you, lots of podcast contributors, people trying to bring the latest and greatest in the world of professional wrestling right to you as soon as possible. And this is a big one, new sponsorship. If you are a fan of professional wrestling video games, but you're sick and tired of spending 60, 70, 80 bucks to get the newest video game, check out Wrestler Unstoppable on Facebook, free to play. All kinds of excitement. Join a corporation, sign contracts, get engaged in feuds, win championships, go into competitions. It's great stuff. Check out Wrestler Unstoppable on Facebook.com. And if you are not already signed up, become a Patreon member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family by going to patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast and contribute today. Get your name in our shout-outs on our random episodes. And if you want to contribute at the $50 a month level, we can get you on to an episode of Going Live at 9:05 Saturday nights every week on the Pro Wrestling Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. This episode, we got things to talk about. We had Raw last night, very exciting. There was a lot of things going on Raw. We have Smackdown tonight to discuss. And, of course, there's always going to be news and tidbits in the world of professional wrestling to discuss. There's the big topic today is Alberto Del Rio, and we will get into that a little bit later. Before we get going with the actual news and rumors, make sure if you have questions, comments, or concerns, anything you want us to address on the Fro Podcast, or if it's just one of those things, you gotta vent your frustration about something, give us your input on our talk to text sound off line, the Fro Wrestling sound off line at 267-642-1160, and we will try to get as many of your comments, your questions, your concerns addressed on our future episodes. So I want to get us started tonight, talking about Alberto, El Patron, and Paige. I want to give an update. We talked in our last episode, the Great Balls of Fire reaction episode. We discussed that there was a rumor out there that Alberto Del Rio was being investigated for domestic violence of some sort. It was very hazy about what was going on. News outlets had reported that Paige claimed on Twitter that there was a woman in a bar situation or an airport situation who had thrown a drink on Alberto El Patron, and that he responded by telling someone to call the police, and that they wanted this woman arrested for, basically assaulting Alberto Del Rio or El Patron. I'm going to go back and forth on that all night, I'm sure. The reality is we were getting so many other tidbits about this story now. So it broke on TMZ that there is actual audio. A person apparently was in attendance in the same location when this all went down and started recording audio where it sounds like you can hear Alberto El Patron talking to someone, telling them to call the police, and essentially referencing that Paige was in some way attacking him. And at one point in the conversation, he talks about, he's clearly intoxicated in the video, and then he goes on to talk about and make reference to cocaine being in Paige's luggage, and to check her, it's all hers, it's all with her. Very strange stuff. Then we got other reports coming out from members of Paige's family. She has a couple brothers who are very tight with the wrestling business. If you don't know already, Paige's family actually has their own promotion in England. And this situation here, or I should say in Europe, this situation here, two of her brothers sounded off on Twitter, one of them claiming that Alberto El Patron has been abusive with her for a very long time, that they have pictures and photo evidence of such, that he's basically a dictator in their relationship. And in this situation, talking about how scared and concerned he is for his sister's well-being. The other brother actually took it another step further, saying that implying that Paige wants to return to World Wrestling Entertainment, but that Alberto will not allow her to. That's part of why he continues to put out these outlandish, profanity-laden interviews and things on whether it's after a GFW taping or at the pay-per-view or whatever, is because he wants to intentionally try to get her terminated by World Wrestling Entertainment because he does not want her going back there. This whole situation is getting very, very crazy and convoluted. The latest article that I read, which I read on WrestleZone.com, indicated that what the theory is that Paige apparently has a family member who is not doing very well, is in a medical treatment facility, and that she got some bad news about that family member, and Alberto apparently has bad blood with her family, and that he in some way referenced that it was good that this person was going to either pass away or was in a bad shape. And that Paige went off about that, and a few moments later that she stormed out and was making a phone call on her cell phone outside of some place located inside this airport, that somebody saw that and tried to, casually take some pictures of her, but that she turned tail when she saw them and went back into the establishment, only to come out a few minutes later and with Alberto right behind her, now doused in some kind of beverage, soaking wet, and yelling at her, and that's where we get the TMZ audio from. So I don't know that anyone is telling us everything that is true about this situation, but you have to wonder what's really going on in this relationship. Broken up a few weeks ago, back together a week later. Now we fast forward to this and we got all this potentially domestic violence situation going on. This is not the kind of person you want to be leading your company's brand into the next phase of the evolution of GFW Impact Wrestling. If I was Impact Wrestling, I would get to the studio and start recording now, run an angle, do whatever you have to do. Get that world championship off of Alberto El Patron. Those people who are into sports across all sports, people like Ray Rice, never get another shot after a domestic violence situation goes viral. And there is a chance that could happen here. You got to wonder if this woman, who apparently there's a woman who did all the video and the audio, you got to wonder if there were other people who are waiting to maybe cash in on this opportunity. And if there is any other video out there, it could be very, very hurtful for one or both of these individuals. And that's not the kind of thing you want to have happening with your world champion. I'm sure that Impact Wrestling through Anthem, GFW, are going to be looking into this situation. I'm going to move on to the Raw Reflection. I want to discuss the happenings in the world of Raw. We'll talk about what happened after Raw, which I found to be fascinating. And then we'll get into tonight's Smackdown breakdown. So, first, the Raw Reflection. As I said last week, I'm no longer going to cover every single match. I'm going to talk about the things on Raw and SmackDown that I think are monumentally important, starting with the start of the show with Big Cass coming out, talking about how he essentially decimated Enzo, and talking about his world, or I should say Universal Championship aspirations. I'm fine with all of that. Of course, you queue up the Big Show, who comes out, who's obviously going to be his first real legit feud as a big guy heel, and it's the Big Show. He gets in the ring, and they have a physical confrontation that was actually really entertaining. The Big Show was moving really well in the ring. It's almost a sin that it took this long for the Big Show to get himself in this kind of shape, because I get the impression had he lost all that weight and got himself in the kind of shape he's in now, maybe 10 years ago, we might be talking very differently about the career of the Big Show. We wouldn't have to worry about those comedic side characters that he had to put on it multiple times throughout his career, because if he could wrestle the way he can wrestle now 10 years ago, who knows what they would have done with him. He would have been pushed significantly better than he already was. This ends up going back and forth, rolling around on the mat, big shots to each other. Cass ends up sliding out of the ring. This will make for an interesting feud. And why I say that is that the Big Show, for being a huge guy, actually has put on some pretty good matches with people along the way. Cass, on the other hand, has played essentially the role of the enforcer for a tag team for an extended period of time, so people don't really know what to expect from Cass in a high-profile singles program. This could be really good for Cass, and it could be a great last major feud for the Big Show before the end of his contract coming up next February, so it'll be curious to see how they handle that. The next part of Raw I want to discuss is the Elias Samson-Finn Balor issue. So Elias Samson comes out again this week. He's running his mouth. Of course, he gets cut off by Finn Balor. It leads to a match, and without going into all the details, essentially a passable match, Finn Balor picking up a very, in my opinion, easy, clean win. Now, here's the issue I have. A couple weeks ago, Elias Samson, maybe it's more than a couple at this point, Elias Samson, when he debuts on the show as an actual performer, beats Dean Ambrose. He has other matches. He's been solid through multiple weeks now. He had a great attack in the announce position on Raw when he blindsided Balor. This looked like a great opportunity to really forge Elias Samson into a solid heel character. And you could have done it without having to have Finn Balor lose the match. You could have had this. Not often you'll hear me endorse a schmaz ending, but this would have been a good time to do that. Elias Samson, Finn Balor, maybe both brawling at it and not breaking up, referees' instructions, break against the rope or something. They both push the referee and they both get disqualified or something of that nature. But whatever you have to do to keep both of these characters strong. What they ended up doing instead of doing that is now Elias Samson has had what I consider to be a relatively easy, clean pinfall loss to Finn Balor. What is the point of setting up these feuds if you're going to let them run for a week and then squash a guy? What is the point of cultivating a talent down in NXT, getting him to the point where he has a following? Believe it or not, whether you cheer or boo, it's still a following for somebody. Elias Samson actually seems to get a pretty good reaction, and then you bury his character by getting pinned so easily by Finn Balor. I have a real problem with them squashing NXT talent all throughout their NXT talent history. Samoa Joe, Finn Balor, Sami Zayn, those are some of the few that have done well, but there's so many others who have not. The Bo Dallases, you look at the people coming up with the Fashion Police, people like that. Those guys have never done anything of any kind of substance, and I don't want to see Elias Samson turn into the next Tyler Breeze. I really don't. I think he's got so much more to offer. He has a better look. He's got a great physique to him. He's got a great moveset. So push him differently. Stop burying the guy already. He just got to the main roster. I'm going to move on because I can go on about Elias Samson all night and move on to the Hardys, who come out and they're talking about how people think they're washed up. They're a nostalgia act. They're not going anywhere. They get interrupted by Gallows and Anderson, who come out, and obviously this is going to set up a match. They end up getting in the ring to my thorough surprise. Now, you expect that the Hardys are going to move out of the tag title picture now that they've lost a few consecutive matches to the tag team champions, Cesaro and Sheamus. But I expected when Gallows and Anderson came out that was going to lead to a feud with specifically Gallows and Anderson. And I was okay with that. Right up until Gallows and Anderson got a clean pinfall victory over the Hardys on Raw. You just had a tag team who was virtually unbeatable. And now all of a sudden they lose to Gallows and Anderson, who are, in my opinion, the equivalent of Jinder Mahal in the tag team division lately. Gallows and Anderson don't beat anybody anymore. And now all of a sudden they beat the former tag team champions who just had a Iron Tag Team match, or Iron Man, 30-minute Iron Man tag team match the night prior. Absolutely ridiculous. But I suppose if you were going to set up a feud between Gallows and Anderson and the Hardys, it's an interesting way to start it. Except that's not what happened. As soon as the match is over, Gallows and Anderson leave the ring, and you cue the music for the Revival, who are going to come out, and then they're going to beat down the Hardys. So clearly we're going to get the Hardys versus the Revival in a feud. But then what happens with Gallows and Anderson? They got a clean pinfall victory over one of the most legendary and greatest tag teams in WWE history, and then they just walk away. The Revival stole the moment. You cue their music, they've been off TV for so long, they come out, they pummel the Hardys, they hit their finishing maneuver, which I find interesting, because the Hardys, when they were cutting their promo, seemed very much broken, if you ask me. And I feel like with the Revival hitting their finishing move, that's just going to lead to a storyline where the Hardys are broken. Curious to see if that plays out the way I just said. If it goes that way, I almost don't care how they book the Hardys as long as we get those broken characters. My concern is that I don't think that's a done deal yet. Maybe it is. Maybe we're all being fooled. People are leaking information. It's BS. But it has been reported that deal is far from being done if it ever gets done. So we'll have to wait and see. Moving on to Miz TV. So Miz TV happens. He's offering out awards. Best Supporting Actor, giving it as a tie to Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. It's kind of a boring, nonsensical segment. Of course, Dean Ambrose, because we can't let this stupid feud die, Dean Ambrose comes out and attacks The Miz, who he then, of course, is getting beat down 3-on-1. And during Miz's promo, he was cutting on Miz TV, he actually made reference to Seth Rollins momentarily. And the issue is then that's obviously when Ambrose is getting beat down 3-on-1, it brings out Seth Rollins, who comes to his aid. I actually enjoyed seeing Seth Rollins come out to help Dean Ambrose, but I don't like the fact that Ambrose is involved at all with The Miz going forward. It's over. You guys have been wrestling since January. We're really sick and tired of seeing it. it's actually somewhat fresh to see Seth Rollins get involved with The Miz. So they fight off The Miz's people. Ambrose picks up a chair and waffles the snot out of The Miz repeatedly before he's knocked out of the ring. And then what I found most bizarre about the whole segment is in the back, for those who pay attention to the news on all the different news feeds, they had just reported that at the Madison Square Garden show that Seth Rollins had actually responded to the fans' reaction of him winning his match and talking about a potential Shield reunion. So it almost looked like that's the direction WWE was going to go. Then after this moment where he comes out and he helps Dean Ambrose, they're shown in the back where Ambrose comes up and gets mad at him. What are you doing out there? What do you think you're doing? You know, this isn't going to be a Shield reunion. I don't trust you. You take care of your business, I'll take care of mine. And it was just awkward. Very awkward. And I didn't enjoy this segment at all. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what they do going forward with that. And we'll see more of that, why I say that a little bit later. But moving on from there, we'll come back to that because that's how they close out the show. We'll move on to Kurt Angle coming out to announce what's going to happen with Brock Lesnar now that he defeated Samoa Joe. Now, I'm going to tell you what happened on Raw, and then I'm going to tell you what's going on in the different internet sites, according to what people are theorizing. So Kurt Angle brings Lesnar out with Paul Heyman. They discuss what happened the night before. They discuss, you know, there's going to be some kind of challenger at SummerSlam. There's some banter back and forth about the booking. And then you cue Roman Reigns' music, who comes out to a hail of boos. Reigns gets in the ring, talks about how Kurt Angle's like, wow, I can't believe you're here after what you did last night. And he's like, he really made reference to the Attitude Era, where Angle and Lesnar and people like Mick Foley and Triple H did things that were just as bad, if not worse, than what he did. And that they should be proud, essentially. And he talks about how he took care of Braun Strowman because Kurt Angle wouldn't, and Brock Lesnar wasn't around to, which I love that part. And before things get going, Reigns wants to get a match at SummerSlam, and of course that's going to incite the anger of the previous night, I should say's loser, Samoa Joe, whose music hits. He comes to the ring, and now Samoa Joe wants his match with Brock Lesnar again. He talks about how Lesnar didn't beat him. I forget how he phrased it. He said, "You survived me," or something of that nature, but or you escaped, or something like that. But whatever, cheesy way they phrased it, what it boils down to is Samoa Joe wants another match. Now, for those who are following me on this, you've got Brock Lesnar, who successfully defends his championship against the number one contender. That typically means when you never got a win over the champion, your time is up. Joe doesn't get another match. Not normally. When it comes to Roman Reigns lost at Great Balls of Fire. When you lose the high-profile match at a pay-per-view, you don't come out the next night and challenge for the world title unless you're AJ Styles. So, the situation is very strange. You've got two losers in the ring challenging the world, or the Universal Champion. The issue is that Kurt Angle should have stepped right in and said, no, you both lost, it's going to be Braun Strowman. But we don't know where Strowman is supposedly at this point, so that doesn't happen. Instead, Kurt Angle says that next week on Raw, Brock Lesnar's opponent will be determined in a number one contenders match between Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe. So that's the storyline coming out of Raw. Now, I will tell you, if you follow eWrestling News or WrestleZone.com or Cage Side Seats or any of those websites, what they are reporting is that the plan right now is that Brock Lesnar, next week, Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe will be having their match, and there will be interference from Braun Strowman. Strowman will cause there to be no clear winner in the match, which will lead to Kurt Angle making the SummerSlam main event a fatal four-way between Brock Lesnar, Braun Strowman, Roman Reigns, and Samoa Joe. This would open up a lot of opportunities for taking the Universal title off of Lesnar without him getting pinned, so he could stay strong. You could get a more regular Universal Champion, so you could defend the title on television a little bit more often and let people see the belt more often. And if Reigns ends up winning it, you could still have your Reigns-Lesnar match at Mania. It doesn't really matter who walks into Mania as champion. Roman Reigns needs to beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania for the Universal title, no matter who walks in, according to Vince's plan. It'll be interesting, as I always say, to see how they book this. Myself, I have a problem with this. Like I said when we were first going into this segment about this, Brock Lesnar beat Joe, he shouldn't even be in the match. Roman Reigns lost to Braun, he should not even be in the match. This should be Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman, and Brock Lesnar should lose to Braun Strowman. You just built Braun Strowman up to be an unstoppable force. Which, by the way, going back to Great Balls of Fire, if Roman Reigns doesn't attempt a spear, he did everything in his power to put Braun Strowman into the back of an ambulance and couldn't do it. He misses a spear, Braun wins the match, and then somehow Reigns gets the energy to slam a door on a guy a couple times, throw him in the back, and then get the equivalent of what would have been a win in the match. Then he takes him in the back and he slams him into a semi, backing the ambulance into a semi, and the guy gets out of the semi and walks away. How do you stop that? How do you kill that character off? Brock Lesnar got beaten 96 seconds or something like that by Goldberg last year. Now you're going to put him in the ring with a guy who even an ambulance accident doesn't stop him? Doesn't make any sense. Going to move on because I'm getting frustrated because every time I think about how they're booking this Universal title, I get irritated. Bray Wyatt and Seth Rollins. They close out the show. Another decent match. It always is with those two. My issue is Bray Wyatt basically pokes him in the eye to set up the win. What a horrible way. First off, you have Akira Tozawa losing a match the night before because somebody kicked a rope into his groin, and the very next night, and the same night, Bray wins the first match between the two by poking him in the eyes, and now on Raw, he's going to poke him in the eyes and win again. You're making these guys look weak. After Bray wins the match, he leaves the ring, and his music hits or whatever. When they come back, The Miz is at ringside. The Miz and his group are surrounding the ring. They jump in, they all attack Seth Rollins, and as that's going down, Dean Ambrose, who only earlier in the night said mind your own business, comes out to his aid, saves Seth Rollins, and beats down the Miztourage. Very strange after the interview they had earlier in the night. So I don't know where they're going with that. Obviously, they want to move the Miz on to a feud with Seth Rollins, but what do you do with Dean Ambrose at this point? Unless you're going to reunite the two of them and have them go into tag team matches, but I think that would be stupid too. They really need to figure something else out for Ambrose. He needs to get away from any championship for a little while and just put on some great matches. That's what made him get the following he had. It wasn't a title. It was his quality of match, which has been dipping lately. I'm going to move on to what happened after Raw that was so very interesting. Dixie Carter makes her appearance on WWE 24 in the Kurt Angle Homecoming episode, which was fantastically done. If you are a fan of the different documentaries they've done, please go onto the network and watch this one, Kurt Angle Homecoming. It was really something special. But what I found amazing about Dixie Carter's segments were, here's the person who, if my understanding is, still has a very minority, but still has an ownership interest in Impact Wrestling. I know she's off her duties. She's not a part of the creative team. She's not really a part of anything anymore. But my understanding is she still owns a little piece. If that's true, it's very strange that she would show up on WWE television to talk about the career of Kurt Angle, who left that promotion. But she was very respectful, and the thing that really came across, I don't care what you think about Dixie Carter and her ability to run a company, when it comes down to her character, her innate human ability, her innate human nature, it is very clear from this video that she cares a great deal about Kurt Angle, speaking about his demons that he went through, the different challenges he had. For those who didn't know, that Kurt Angle broke his neck 4 times in his wrestling career, counting amateur and pro. I mean, there's a lot of info in this documentary. Please check it out. But it was really cool to see Dixie Carter really showcase how much she was really in his corner and supported him through his darkest times. And it was great to see the rehash of his Hall of Fame and get to see his wife's reaction to everything and his beautiful family, the wonderful children. What an amazing documentary. So great stuff. Finally, tonight in this episode, I want to go over a few things from SmackDown. I was not impressed with SmackDown at all tonight. I'm just saying. I'm going to talk about the 3 things that I think mattered. First off, Tamina and Natalya got a tag team match going against Charlotte and Becky Lynch. They announced earlier on the show that there's going to be a 5-women elimination match to determine the number 1 contender to go to SummerSlam to take on Naomi for the Women's Championship. I don't care at all about that. There was some frustration over Alana being included in that 5-woman match, but whatever. This tag team match, the reason I bring it up is Tamina Snuka hits a super kick and picks up the win. It's about freaking time Tamina gets some respect. Tamina's a fantastic talent. She deserves a run with that women's championship, and hopefully this is the start of something where she actually will get a chance to go for that title, because they have wasted her talent for all the years she's been in WWE. So it was an excellent moment to see her get a clean pinfall victory over Charlotte after a hot tag. The next thing I want to talk about, and I'm going out of order for a reason, Tye Dillinger losing to Jinder Mahal in a glorified squash match. What is WWE doing? Why did you even bring Tye Dillinger up to the main roster? It's like the whole issue we have with Elias Sampson. Dillinger is over with the fans. The fans love him. They chant the 10 all the time. This is a guy you should be building, not squashing. If you don't want to have him put on a better showing against the world champion, don't put him in the ring with the world champion. Put him in a feud with somebody else. Give him something of substance to do. This was a waste of Tye Dillinger. Now he's come to the main roster. He's lost more than he's won. He's been buried with non-appearances and insignificant, unimportant matches since he got on the roster. Every time he's in the ring, he tries to put on a great show. The fans love him, and all they keep doing is burying his character. What horrible booking. WWE ought to be ashamed of themselves. And moving on to the last segment from Smackdown, because I don't have a lot to say about Smackdown this week. I'm frustrated. AJ Styles coming out to answer questions about his United States Championship victory, what he plans to do, talks about how the title's not about Owens anymore. He's bringing back the United States Championship Open Challenges, which brings out John Cena, who's going to challenge him, goes to the ring. The match is getting ready to get started. When Kevin Owens comes out, he's going to throw down his 2 cents, complaining about the match, complaining about Cena coming back, and out of nowhere, Rusev is going to attack John Cena and AJ Styles. Even a blind man can see that this was going to lead to a tag team match later in the show, which was cool because there was actually a backstage segment where Cena reassured Styles that he had his back tonight. But when they get to the actual tag team match, it was basically another one of those like baby faces are going to beat the heels and you knew it from the beginning type of situations. And I didn't appreciate it. Like, start acting like we're not too smart to figure out your horrible booking. It's almost insulting at this point. John Cena, AJ Styles, they pick up the win, a Pele kick, attitude adjustment pin. Horrible way to end the show. They need to do something of better substance. AJ Styles, John Cena, again, would actually be exciting to me because they put on such great matches. AJ Styles versus Kevin Owens at SummerSlam is going to, or Battleground, is going to be boring to me. I actually have more interest in AJ Styles versus Rusev, but I know that's not going to happen. So, not real impressed with SmackDown this week. Just not. That's my SmackDown breakdown. That's all the time we have for this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. Make sure you check back with us on Saturday night at 9:05 for Going Live at 9:05 every week on the Spreaker Network. And then afterwards, you can catch the replay on YouTube. Don't forget to check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/ProWrestlingPodcast. And bensound.com, purpleplanet.com. Thank you guys as always for producing all our music and sound effects. Everything you hear that is not my voice is all thanks to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com. And thanks to AlleyRepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. Don't forget to go to FroLifePlanning.com for any college, university, or career advice you need. FroLife Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with FroLife. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. And if you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to tsjsports.com/WWE for the latest articles on the world of pro wrestling. Until next episode, take care, everybody. Have a great night.